Gideon. Nice to see you. Am I on? Yeah? Hey, there we go. So once a year, usually about May, I get a respiratory infection, and then I end up with a cough for a couple of weeks. If you've been here for any length of time, you know the drill. And then I cough my way through a message, and that's today. So I was sick 2.5 weeks ago. It's still hanging out. If you're scared, you don't have to be. This is just what's happening. I have a cough drop stuffed into my cheek. You didn't know you were sitting in the splash zone today. I apologize. And we're going to make our way through this. So it's going to be great. You know, one of my favorite things to do in the winter is to go skiing. I always laugh because my two favorite hobbies are free diving and downhill skiing. And I live in the Sonoran Desert, which is a conundrum. I'm not an amazing skier, but I've had this goal. And here's why. It was a couple of years ago. Actually, it was a while ago at this point, probably a decade ago. I was skiing up in Flagstaff, up in Snowball, and at their ski area. And as I'm going down the hill, I went a little quicker than I'd ever gone before, and I found myself hitting 50 miles an hour. And I got to the bottom, and I thought, that was the most fun I think I've ever had skiing. And then I thought, if that's what 50 feels like, this thing popped into my head where I was like, what does 60 feel like, right? And I was like, it's got to be more fun. Like, that's definitely the way that's going to work. It's got to be more fun. And from that moment, I've just had this like weird goal that's become almost like a weird passion in me, where in one of our mountains, because don't get me wrong, like a double black diamond, if you're scared, you'd understand. In Colorado, I could go do that. But in Arizona, we don't always have those type of runs. And so I was like, I'm going to hit 60 miles an hour here. And that I'm not going to do it just like squatting down and kamikazing down the hill. That's dangerous. I'm a dad of 2 and my kids don't need that, right? So what I am going to do is try to do it cleanly and with good skiing and good form and all this stuff. I want to try to do that. So I have been trying to the degree that my watch will track my miles per hour. And I got to 59.8. And I know what some of you are thinking. You guys are like, that's 60 miles an hour. But it didn't start with a 6. And so we have a problem. Do you see what I'm saying? And so I'm still after this. I'm like, but I'm gonna officially hit this. Like, I'm gonna try to do this. And so I have. It's been like a passion. It's been a goal of mine that I want to do it. And so I went up to Snowball a few years ago, 2 years ago now. And I just thought, today's the day. I'm going to make this happen. And there's one run, it goes all the way to the top, and you can go all the way to the bottom. And that's going to give you about enough time that you can pick up the kind of speed that I'm after. Where by the bottom, by the time I get there, maybe I'll hit this once I'll hit 60 miles an hour. And so I think, okay, let's do it. And so I go. And I'm doing great at the top part of this. It's going great. And I feel like I'm like right around 55. That's what it feels like to me. And then I go into the second piece of this and continue on. And I can tell I'm like getting close to 60 miles an hour. And right as I get to where I'm going to go into the third part, I'm like, this is my moment. I'm going to do it. I come over this hill where I'm going to drop back down. And now there's like a lip. And I've skied this hill so many times before, but I never went over this moment this fast. And so what ended up happening was where normally I would ski and go down, I skied and just shot off the hill, like through the air. And I wasn't ready for any of that at like 58 miles an hour. And so I hit it sideways on accident, like not squared up, and my legs were no longer underneath me as I watched my skis come out in front of me. You never want to see that when you're in the air going really fast, right? That's not what you're looking for. And suddenly I just slammed down into the hill, and my skis hit. And it just left me going end over end. And every time I'd go end over end, my helmet would slam into the snow again. That's how I knew what direction was up and down, is because that one's clearly down, right? And my shoulder popped, and that felt not great. It hurt. And then I got like a solid bruise on my hip, and I'm just hitting and hitting and hitting. And then finally I bring myself to a stop after 40, 50 yards of just, somersaulting down this hill. And it hurt. It was a pretty bad fall. I don't think I've had a fall quite like this particular fall. In fact, I know I never have. Like, this was the fall for me. It was a really big one. And I've got snow everywhere. Everything hurts. I'm trying to figure out like what's up, what's down. And the very first question I'm asking, like, is anything broken? Am I okay? Like what's going on? And so I'm just sitting there and I decide, okay, I probably need to get up. And this snowboarder had seen the whole thing. There was like one other person on this hill because I wanted it to be empty. And so there's only one other person, and they'd seen the whole thing. And he just comes snowboarding up to me, and he stops next to me and he goes, "Hey man, you okay?" And I said, yeah, I think so. I took a pretty good fall. And he was like, yeah. And he laughed. And he was like, I'm out here all the time. And that was top 3 for the season for sure. I was really embarrassed. Where I was like, yeah, well, you win some, you lose some. I don't know. Like, I didn't know what to say. And I'm embarrassed. So I'm like, I need to leave now. I have an audience. I'm going to get up. And so I start getting up, and I just feel this hand on my shoulder, and it's him. And he just pushes me back down. He goes, why don't you just sit down there for a minute and just take in the situation and make sure you're okay. And I just sat here. And this weird like guardian angel of a snowboarder on the random mountain that day sits down next to me, and he's like, it's okay, I'll sit with you. And I was like, you don't have to do that. And he pulls out a cigarette and lights it, and he goes, I'm not going anywhere. And just sits there next to me. And I was just like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And I started to think, like, am I hurt? Am I okay? Is this okay? And I sat there for just a little bit, and I finally looked over at him, and I was just like, I think I'm good. I'm going to go now. And he was like, okay, cool. And then he just looked at me, and he was like, I hope you have a better day. And I was like, yeah, thanks. And I just went down the mountain. And as I went my way back down the mountain, I was skidding and awkward because everything hurt, and it felt out of whack, and it felt out of sorts. And I just was like, man, that was crazy. One of the people I'd gone skiing with heard about my fall, and they said, oh man, you were so close. Are you going to try again? And I looked at them and I said, no. That's what I said. And the reason why is because the passion that was in me, like the energy and this goal and all of this stuff, it was not there in that moment. Like it had just gone. I suddenly found myself going like, I don't think I want to fall that hard again. I don't think I want that to happen again. Like my hip hurts, my shoulder hurts, everything kind of hurts. And I hope I didn't get concussed or anything. Like, I don't think I'm going to do it again. And so I looked and I said, not today, maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow is what I said. That began the beginning of 1 year where I stopped doing something I love the way that I love to do it because I finally knew what it was like to fall that hard and to feel the pain that comes from it. And I found myself going, I know what it's like to fail, and I know what it's like to fall, and I know what it feels like. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this again anytime soon. See, friends, I know I'm talking about skiing, and I know not everybody skis. We live in the desert, so certainly not everybody here skis. But I wonder, have you ever had a moment in your life where you had a goal or a passion or something that was really important to you? It could be a relationship. It could be a whole host of things. And you failed at whatever that important thing was that you cared about. Or maybe you didn't fail, but the thing that you cared about fails. And then afterwards, there's this kind of pain and fear and hardship that comes from it. Right? Have you ever had that moment? You don't have to be a skier to kind of know what I'm illustrating here today. See, here's what I want to talk about. I think that one of the hardest moments in life isn't just when we fail or when something that we care about fails. That's hard. I'm not minimizing that. But I think one of the hardest moments is what happens immediately after that. When suddenly we still have to figure out how to live a life. When suddenly we still have to figure out how to get back up and get on our skis again, so to speak. I think that's one of the hardest things that we face in different times. And I want to talk about some of that today. Let me ask you this question just to think about it for you. How many of you remember the first time that you had your heart broken in a dating relationship? Do you remember that first time? Here's what I'm going to guess, because I've talked to a lot of people through these situations at this point, and here's what I'm going to guess. The very first relationship you ever had like that, you went in vulnerable and open-hearted because you didn't know any better. And you cared, and it felt amazing until it didn't. And the first time you felt that sense of heartbreak, you felt a real, genuine loss inside of you. You felt a real, genuine heartbreak that you hadn't felt before. And how many of us in that particular moment suddenly was like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to feel that way again. I don't want to step into that way again. And so then you changed something. You started saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step into whatever I step into now, just not as vulnerable. I'm going to actually anticipate failure. I'm going to anticipate that something's going to end or break or hurt because I want to prepare myself for it, to protect myself from that moment. I'm going to defend against it. Some of us have even found ourselves going, I'm not going to open myself up to be close enough to anyone that's going to hurt me that way again, because you know what it's like to fall and to fail. And you know what that pain can feel like, and you're like, I don't want to feel this way again. And so you start to reorient your life to it. How many of you ever put yourself out there at work in a moment? Maybe there was an opportunity to step into. You had an idea you wanted to suggest, or maybe there was some team you got to lead. And you're like, I'm going to do this. I care about this. I'm passionate about this. I want this. And you took that thing you wanted and you stepped into it, and then you got shot down by your boss. Or all of a sudden people just didn't like it. You got dismissed for something in that particular moment. Or maybe even you got to a spot where the opportunity failed, it didn't work, or the team didn't coalesce and it kind of fell apart or was at each other and didn't actually form and work together. And you felt what it was like in that particular moment to put yourself out there and then to feel what it's like to fail and to fall. And then you go, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just sit at my desk or wherever it is that you are. I'm gonna keep my head down. I'm not putting myself out there like that again. I'm gonna avoid it because I don't like the way that feels and I don't wanna feel that way again. Or how many of you have tried to follow God at some point in your life because you felt like God was leading you or moving you, and then you tried and it didn't work? Or you failed. Or the thing that you cared about failed. And it kind of hurt you. You didn't like how that felt, and maybe you got embarrassed. And it just felt weird, uncomfortable and weird, and you found yourself going, I don't want to feel that way again. And now whenever it feels like God might be leading you, tugging at you, or guiding you in a certain direction, you close yourself off to it because you want to avoid that. Keep your head down. Keep your relationship at a distance.